And the Philadelphia Eagles have been under investigation since free agency really saw the dust settle for tampering. Two very different cases, but both have moved forward. And it was just before the draft that Adam Schefter of ESPN.com reported that resolution could be announced in both cases draft week. The NFL quickly said, no, it's not. Now, on Sunday, Schefter reported the resolutions are likely to come this week. And he added, citing an unnamed source, that the Falcons are expected to get it worse than the Eagles because the Falcons case is believed to be more egregious. Now, let's start with the Eagles because that's the easiest one to explain.
Yeah.
James Franklin, the head coach of Penn State, the week that Saquon Barkley jumped from the Giants to the Eagles, Franklin said that when they were recruiting Barkley, Howie Roseman pointed out how many Penn State fans are in the Eagles fan base. That was it. Something Franklin said. It wasn't anything Barkley said. Barkley denied it. It wasn't anything Roseman said. It was James Franklin. Now, the fact that the way Schefter is couching this implies that the Eagles are going to get whacked. And it clearly implies the Eagles are in trouble. That apparently whatever Franklin said was accurate and that Barkley's denial doesn't hold water and that they were able to investigate and determine that there was a communication that Roseman was involved in. We know the precedent for that if the league cares about precedent and consistency. They took a third-round pick from the Chiefs in 2016 for talking directly to Jeremy Maclin, then of the Eagles, during the negotiating window when you're not allowed to speak directly to the player. So it should be a third-round pick. And I say that because if the Falcons are going to get it significantly worse than the Eagles, and the baseline for the Eagles is a 3, if we care about consistency and precedent, the Falcons might really get hammered here.
I don't disagree. I mean, I'm definitely interested to see where the Falcons thing goes. The Eagles thing was surprising just because the fact that Schefter put it out there made it like, oh, wait, so this is real. This is really going to happen. I don't have any inside info there on that. But that was one where I was like, I don't know if anything's going to stick there, right? It seemed like, who knows, right? James Franklin might have been talking like, hey, I talked to this person who told me this, right? It's like third-person conversations. I didn't know what to think of it. But obviously there's something there. And, obviously there was some tampering or reaching out to Saquon to let him know of interest and all that. But, yeah, the Falcons one, Mike, I'm with you there. Again, that seems egregious at every angle we discuss, right? And I would think that, yes, something significant comes down on them here when this comes down.
One last point on the Eagles. Let's think about this. Unless the Eagles just decided to be completely candid and honest and admit that they did it, okay? Which most teams would not do. Let's face it. Their attitude would be, you have to prove it. We're not admitting anything. Now, maybe they scared the Eagles into not lying to them, that if we find out you're lying, just call Sean Payton and ask him how that went for him when they lied to us about the bounty scandal in 2012. They typically don't react well when you lie. And I could see the Eagles convening a meeting of their brain trust and running through all the various possibilities, just like analytics on whether or not to go for it on fourth down. What happens if we tell the truth? What happens if we lie? What happens if they prove we lied? How much worse is it going to be for us if we just don't admit what we did, if they did it? But, think about it. If everybody is committed to saying this didn't happen, how do you prove it happened? So I think, and I'm a big proponent of Occam's razor, I think the simplest explanation is always the right one. I think the Eagles just admitted it because they didn't want, if this implication from Schefter's reporting is accurate, it would suggest the Eagles realized we're going to get this a hell of a lot worse if we lie and then they find out we lied. Let's just go ahead and do the right thing because our best interests are served by doing the right thing and telling the truth.
Yeah,
that would explain how they got them because I don't know how else you prove it. Your phone records, like, Howie's not dumb. He'll call the agent and then the agent third parties Saquon in. So it would show a call to the agent. It wouldn't show a call to Saquon Barkley. They're not going to be dumb enough to have a digital trail of communications directly with Saquon Barkley. So I think the only way we get to this point where there's a presumption the Eagles are going to get whacked is, number one, it happened, and number two, they admitted it.
Yeah, and something along those lines. I think you're right in the fact that, we've seen the NFL, when you lie or mislead investigators, they hold that against you, and they might punish you a little more excessively than they would have otherwise. You've wasted their time. You lied to them, all of that, right? So there's something. But, yeah, I don't know what it is. I really don't. And you're right. I don't know how you prove it, right? Unless there was something of a significant, like just an obvious text, right? There's something like that, which I'm with you. I would go, man, that's, a pretty, big blunder to make. That's a minor league mistake there to be doing that for Major League Football, right? I mean, that's where I would just be shocked by it. But, has it gone through my mind that, like, hey, we saw Andy Reid, right, text Hollywood Brown when free agency come open, hey, think red today, specifically Chiefs red, right, or whatever. Did he give something like that, a little tongue-in-cheek, something to Saquon? Like, hey, we're just down the Jersey Turnpike, we got some different colors, but we're damn good. And it was that, and they just know, wait, there is a little bit of a paper trail. I don't know, but obviously something's going down here.
They all justify doing it because, number one, everyone does it, and number two, teams rarely get busted for it. And frankly, if James Franklin doesn't run his mouth,
nobody knows.
It's not an issue.
Right.
It's not an issue.
Right.
So I'll say this. I want to be careful not to go farther than I should with what I reported at the time. But when I saw that Franklin had said it, I reached out to the team for comment. And maybe I got the impression in the process of trying to get comment that it's possible Franklin spoke the truth. I don't, no one said that, but the reaction generally seemed to be,
oh crap,
of like, oh shit,
yeah, right,
yeah,
right.
Not, oh, James Franklin's, he's just wrong. I mean, but so anyway, that's the starting point. The implication from Schefter's report, the Eagles are going to get it. And if they're going to get anything, it means Franklin was accurate. And you would, if you care about precedent and consistency, it would be a third-round pick. For the Falcons, and God love Kirk Cousins, I tried to give him, and it wasn't tongue-in-cheek, it was real. In an industry that is chock full of people who lie strategically because they have to, this guy's just too honest. Like you ask him, hey, would you have sided with the Falcons if you'd known they were going to take Michael Penix? He doesn't lie to you. He just says, I don't want to answer hypotheticals because we know what the truthful answer would be. Hell no, I wouldn't have signed with the Falcons if I'd known they were taking Michael Penix. So he's very honest, and he was both honest and completely unprepared. He walked right into it. He stepped on the rake in his introductory press conference. He admitted to up to four different ways the Falcons tampered with him in violation of the rules that you can't talk directly to the player during the 52-hour negotiating window. That's why the Falcons are going to get hammered here, because Cousins went in and it wasn't like he was facing a interrogation under a hot light like Newman sweating under his own hot light. He just went out there and started blurting this stuff out like no one had bothered to tell him. You should probably be discreet about talking to the trainer yesterday, or talking to Ryan Pace, the director of player personnel, before 4 o'clock Eastern today, or being directly involved in recruiting Darnell Mooney to join us from the Bears when you weren't even our employee yet and you were recruiting Mooney to come join us, or Kyle Pitts for the last 2 weeks working on you and talking about who's going to wear number 8. That's how detailed it got. And Pitts was smart enough to deny it all when I had mentioned it, and Cousins just put it all out there. So that's why the Falcons are in hot water. And, I mean, it's people are all over the map. People I talk to, some will say they're just going to slap him on the wrist because Rich McKay has too much juice with the commissioner. And others are saying, I think they're going to get a first-round draft pick stripped.
I think it's going to be something strong. I do. I don't know if that's first rounder, but first, maybe, second round, something significant. I mean, those are egregious, even for the NFL, which, like you said, is about tampering and all that, and it goes on, and we all know it does. Right, that's a little above and beyond the normal tampering issues you see right there. And yeah, I mean, Kirk Cousins certainly wasn't prepared for it. It was like the only thing he caught himself was a little bit with like the trainer, right? He tried to like
met.
Kind of
he
fix
started
that.
to say we met. He said met.
Right.
And see, and this gets to a great point, Chris.
Yeah.
How aggressively did they investigate this?
Yeah.
Did they go all the way down the rabbit hole? Did they have the same antenna go up that we had go up when he said meeting with, talking to, right? So maybe he's not as honest as we gave him credit for. But that would, at least as a former lawyer who's trying to like put that behind him and forget about those days, that is still hardwired into me. You hear that and you think, whoa, we have to take a closer look at this. Let's look at surveillance cameras. Let's look at phones. That's my real question. And we're not going to get a Ted Wells report. How aggressively did they push this? How far down the rabbit hole did they go? And that's what somebody said to me back when it happened. If he actually met with the trainer, it's at least a first-round pick that needs to be taken away.
I would think so. When you get that far down the road and there's that many things that we can kind of speak of just right off the top of our head, it also would make me believe there's even more than that. And as we spitballed at the time, I mean, yeah, that was an aggressive contract for a guy in his situation with that injury and all of that. I think we both kind of thought like, man, are we sure they didn't get a look at him? They didn't get to touch his ankle a little bit and look at it. I mean, and with what you would believe and what we know right now, I would think that some of that stuff went down. Yeah.
And that's an important point. And I'm glad you mentioned it. Before Cousins went out there and just said all these different ways they tampered with him, we were already suspicious. How do you get to the point 2 hours into the negotiating window when all you can be doing is talking to his agent that based on a video of him throwing passes on a tennis court, you're willing to commit $100 million with no exception? Remember this. We reported this a few weeks ago. There's no exception in there for the Achilles, like the Jimmy Garoppolo contract from last year. All he has to do is rehab under the auspices of the team, do what they tell him to do to rehab it, and the $100 million is fully and completely guaranteed, period, end of discussion. How do you get to the point? It's irresponsible to get to the point that you're going to make a $100 million investment sight unseen or based on his tennis court, hey, look, I can throw a football at 1/4 speed at best. So what did they do? And that's the other side of this. How aggressive was the league? Did somebody get pissed off and say, all right, sorry, Rich. Sorry, we know you're the chair of the competition committee, but you know what? This stinks. And we're going to find out exactly what you guys did. And it's going to be more than who talked to Cousins between noon Eastern on Monday and 4 Eastern on Wednesday. Because you know what? Those idiots on PFT Live, they usually say a lot of dumb shit, but we think they're kind of onto something here. How did you get to the point where you're willing to give the guy $100 million based on that stupid video of him throwing a football on a tennis court? Surely you did more than that is even beyond the scope of the normal tampering that happens in the 52 hours. There it is. If you're giving a guy $100 million based on that and that alone as the proof that he's recovered from his ACL or his Achilles, that's an irresponsible expenditure of money, period.
Yeah, I would agree. I would almost, there's a part of me that would say, yeah, I'd feel better to know that they did cheat or tamper or do homework before they gave him $180 million rather than just going into it blind. But yeah, this one is it's going to be very interesting. What did we see? Miami lost a first rounder a few years ago.
1 and a 3.
A 1 and a 3
for tampering with Sean Payton and Tom Brady, and they never ended up getting either one of them.
That's where
it was attempted tampering.
Right. That's where I was going to go with it. But yes,
but they didn't get them.
That
and they
to
lost
me
a 1
is
and
the
a
next,
3.
or the one that I go was the most egregious. Right, trying to skirt the rules of the NFL, screw over two organizations, and do something like that we can see. And yeah, I don't know if it's as egregious as that, but it's close. It is, and yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if it's multiple picks. I would not.
I still have a memory of 2 years ago where you and I collaborated on the reporting of the effort to get Sean Payton and Tom Brady, and we weaved it together. We talked about it on here.
We were texting on a Friday night, and you texted me and you said, I'm getting these weird feeling that this is going on. And I was like, funny you should say that, because I know this is going on with one part of it. And we started to slowly but surely put it together, and no one believed us for like 5 months.
And no one believed us, and then it happened. And look, I don't care as long as the check clears, but when it finally happened, there weren't many people that said, those idiots were right all along. Maybe the next time they say something that we say, boy, that seems odd, we won't just dismiss it. And this gets back to the thing Jay Glazer told me years ago. The only true journalism that happens in this world is the stuff they don't want you to know. like the Vikings trying to trade up to get Malik Neighbors. They don't want you to know that.
Right.
99% of what happens is a transaction that's going to be announced anyway is leaked to someone 5 minutes in advance, and that gets applauded as journalism. It's just having the relationship in place where someone hands you something they're going to announce anyway. All right, we need to take a break. But anyway, this week, we'll see.
Right.
And I'm going to be very curious how much they tell us about what they did to investigate, what they tell us about what the penalties are, the whole thing. I want to know how open they are with what occurred, and I'm going to be watching very carefully because I really still think that at some level Rich McKay's relationship with the league might make it better for the Falcons. Oh, I know. I want to say one thing. I filibustered there long enough so I could remember it. People were suggesting to me after the draft, readers, that the Falcons took Penix at 8 overall because they anticipate not having a first-rounder next year. So if we're going to take a quarterback to be the successor to Cousins, we got to do it now. And I dismissed that.
Yeah.
I had somebody from another team say last night, you know what, I'm starting to think they took Penix in part because they know they're going to get hammered.
Well,
so we'll see.
Yeah. And there might be some logic to that there, right? There might be some. I think what I do know from Atlanta's standpoint to a degree, right, is they think they're going to be good. If Kirk Cousins plays the way they think he can play, they're not going to have any high draft picks anytime soon. Right. And from what I know, they viewed Michael Penix as like the best quarterback to come out in football like the last few years. That's how special they thought he was. So they were willing to do that. But maybe your thing there plays in part with that. And, there is some logic there.
And here's the favor to Rich McKay that isn't going to be obvious. Delaying the outcome so they didn't lose the Penix pick. They're losing a first-rounder if that's what happens next year, that's going to be a hell of a lot lower than number 8. That's a subtle way. Just tap the brakes. We're not going to do it before this draft. They use the 8th overall pick on their quarterback moving forward, and then we'll take away their first rounder for next year. First round is a first rounder, but as we know, there's a huge difference between 1 and 32 and all points in between. The first rounder they ultimately lose is going to be a lot less valuable if they lose one than the first rounder they would have lost if this had been done as it should have been before this year's draft. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.